poor single mom mistook the black man as her Uber driver, unaware he was her new CEO millionaire boss. The city wept a cold, relentless November rain, each drop a tiny hammer against Alara Reed's already fractured hope. It slicked the pavement, blurred the streetlights into hazy constellations, and soaked through the thin fabric of her son's jacket. Beside her, 6-year-old Leo shivered, his small hand a desperate anchor in hers. Their worldly possessions, 2 backpacks and a worn teddy bear, sat in a puddle on the curb, a pathetic monument to their eviction. The landlord hadn't cared that her paycheck was 2 days late, or that her second job had cut her hours. The lock was changed. The door was closed. Their life was on the sidewalk. Alara blinked away the rain and the tears, her gaze fixed on her phone screen, watching the little car icon crawl across the map. Her last $17 were about to be spent on a ride to a shelter across town. "Mommy, are we going to our new castle now?" Leo's voice was a small, hopeful whisper against the city's roar, a sound that both shattered and fortified her heart in the same breath. What happens when a simple mistake, born of desperation, sets a collision course with a destiny grander and more terrifying than you could ever imagine? A pair of impossibly bright headlights cut through the gloom, reflecting off the wet asphalt. A long, black sedan, silent as a shadow, pulled to a perfect stop beside them. It wasn't the beat-up sedan the app had shown, but in her rain-soaked panic, with Leo's shivering growing more pronounced, Alara didn't hesitate. She pulled open the back door. "Thank you so much for getting here so quickly," she said, her voice trembling as she helped Leo clamber inside, his wet sneakers squeaking on the pristine leather. She slid in after him, pulling their meager bags onto the floor mat. "The address is 1451 Hope Street, the Northside Women's Shelter." From the driver's seat, Julian Vance turned, his brow furrowed in confusion. He had been on his way home from a grueling 14-hour day, lost in thoughts of quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. He'd pulled over to answer an urgent text from his COO, not to pick up a fare. He was about to tell this woman she'd made a mistake, that this was a private car, but the words died on his lips. He saw the raw desperation etched onto her face, the dark circles of exhaustion under her eyes, and the fierce, protective way she wrapped an arm around the small boy huddled next to her. The child looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. Julian's own heart, a hollowed-out cavern of grief for 5 long years, felt a strange, unfamiliar tremor. The address she'd given, Hope Street, was a cruel irony he couldn't ignore. In that split second, a decision was made, one that defied all logic and every rule of his meticulously ordered solitary life. He simply nodded, his expression unreadable. "Of course," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that seemed to calm the very air in the car. He turned back to the wheel, put the car in drive, and pulled away from the curb, leaving the life he knew behind him. The ride was silent, save for the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers and Leo's soft breathing. Alara was too exhausted and overwhelmed to make small talk, and Julian was a fortress of quiet contemplation. He watched them in the rearview mirror. He saw the way the woman, Alara, discreetly wiped a tear from her cheek, thinking he wouldn't notice. He saw the way she brushed Leo's damp hair from his forehead, a gesture of infinite tenderness. He saw the worn seams on her coat and the hole in the boy's sneaker. It was a portrait of quiet suffering, yet there was an undeniable strength in her posture, a dignity that poverty hadn't managed to erase. When they arrived at the shelter, a grim, institutional-looking brick building, Alara fumbled with her phone. "The app, it's not letting me pay. I'm so sorry." There must be a glitch. Panic flared in her eyes again. Julian held up a hand. "Don't worry about it. It's on me." Alara looked stunned. "I can't let you do that. It's too much." "It's nothing," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Just get the boy inside where it's warm." Overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness, Alara could only whisper a thank you. She hustled Leo out of the car and through the shelter doors, the weight of their backpacks a familiar burden. As Julian watched them disappear, his gaze fell to the back seat. Lying on the plush leather was a small, tattered brown purse. He reached back and picked it up. Inside, he found no money, just a worn library card, a photo of her and the boy smiling in a park, and a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it. It was a new hire confirmation letter. Her name was Alara Reed, and her new job, starting Monday as part of the overnight cleaning crew, was at Vance Innovations, his company. Julian sat in his car for a long time, the rain drumming on the roof, the letter clutched in his hand. Vance Innovations, his building, his life's work, the empire he'd built as a monument to what? Success? Distraction? It was a place of cold glass and colder transactions. And now, this woman, Alara Reed, was about to enter it, not as a guest or an executive, but as an invisible part of the machinery that kept it running. A strange sense of responsibility settled over him, heavier than any corporate merger. It was the same feeling that had made him drive them here, a pull he didn't understand but couldn't deny. He couldn't just leave her at this shelter. He couldn't let her and her son become another statistic swallowed by the city's indifference. He drove back to the shelter, the purse on the passenger seat beside him, a silent testament to their brief, strange encounter. But when he went inside, a weary-looking woman at the front desk informed him that they were full for the night. A mother and her son had been there, she recalled, but they'd had to leave just a few minutes ago. There was nowhere for them to go. A cold dread, an emotion he hadn't felt so acutely in years, washed over Julian. They were back out on the streets in the rain. He returned to his car, his mind racing. He was Julian Vance. He could track stock market fluctuations to the microsecond and predict global economic trends. Surely he could find one woman and a child. He made a call. "David," he said when his head of security answered. "I need you to find someone. Her name is Alara Reed. She has a son, about 6 years old. They're on foot, likely near the Northside shelter." David, accustomed to tracking corporate spies and disgruntled ex-employees, was momentarily taken aback by the request, but his training kicked in. "On it, Mr. Vance." Within the hour, David called back. "We found them, sir. They checked into the Starlight Motel on the edge of town. Paid cash for one night. Not a nice place, sir." Julian knew the type. Rented by the hour with sirens for a lullaby. He drove there himself, the sleek sedan looking comically out of place in the cracked, weed-strewn parking lot. He found their room at the end of a dimly lit corridor. He could hear a child coughing from inside. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the door. What was he doing here? What was he going to say? "Hello, I'm the billionaire CEO you mistook for an Uber driver, and I've come to rescue you?" Sounded absurd even in his own head. But the sound of that cough, weak and wet, spurred him into action. He knocked. The door opened a crack, and Alara's tired face appeared, her eyes wide with suspicion and fear. "Can I help you?" she asked, her body language defensive, ready to slam the door shut. Then her eyes focused on his face, and a wave of recognition, followed by profound confusion, washed over her. You're the driver." Julian held up her purse. "You left this in my car." Relief warred with embarrassment on her face. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize." She reached for it, but Julian didn't hand it over just yet. "I also found this," he said, gesturing with the new hire letter still in his other hand. "Vance Innovations." Alara's eyes widened further. "Yes, that's where I start on Monday. I work there," Julian said, simplifying the truth for now. "In management. And I know the company has a program for employees facing housing crises. A corporate apartment, fully furnished. And we can issue you an advance on your salary to get you back on your feet." Alara stared at him, her mind struggling to process his words. A corporate apartment? A salary advance? It sounded too good to be true, a fantasy spun from her most desperate prayers. And that was precisely why she didn't trust it. "No," she said, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "I can't accept that. It's too much. I don't take charity." Her pride was a shield, the only armor she had left. "It isn't charity, Ms. Reed," Julian countered, his tone calm and professional. "It's an investment." The company functions better when its employees aren't sleeping in motels. We have a vacant unit not far from the office. It's just sitting there. You would be doing us a favor by occupying it. From behind her, Leo coughed again. A deep, rattling sound that sent a fresh wave of fear through Alara. His forehead felt warm. A fever was setting in, and this drafty, damp room was the worst possible place for him. She looked from her sick child back to the stranger at her door. He wasn't pushy or creepy. There was a sincerity in his dark eyes, a quiet authority that was somehow reassuring. He wasn't offering a handout. He was offering a lifeline, framed in the sterile language of corporate policy. And for Leo's sake, she knew she had to grab it. "Okay," she whispered, the single word feeling like a monumental surrender and a profound victory all at once. "Okay, but I will pay back every single cent. I promise you." Julian nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "I have no doubt you will." Ms. Reed, her integrity, even in the face of such hardship, was more impressive to him than any business deal he'd ever closed. It was a rare currency he hadn't encountered in a very long time. The corporate apartment was less of an apartment and more of a palace in the sky. It was on the 30th floor of a sleek glass tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking panorama of the city Alara had only ever seen from street level. It was clean, warm, and filled with soft, comfortable furniture. The kitchen was stocked with food, the refrigerator humming with life. For Leo, it was beyond a castle. It was a spaceship, a cloud kingdom, a dream made real. He ran from room to room, his earlier sickness forgotten in a wave of pure, unadulterated joy. "Mommy, look, 2 bathrooms. We can go at the same time," he yelled, his voice echoing in the spacious living room. Alara felt a laugh bubble up, the first genuine one in weeks. Watching her son's happiness was a balm to her weary soul. Julian had arranged everything with quiet efficiency. He'd driven them there, carried their bags inside, and then simply said, "Get some rest. Human Resources will contact you tomorrow with the details." But he didn't leave. He lingered, finding excuses to stay. He showed her how to work the complicated thermostat. He pointed out the location of the nearest pharmacy. He seemed drawn to the small pocket of warmth and life they had brought into the sterile, empty space. Alara, still cautious, watched him. She couldn't figure him out. He was kind but distant, generous, but with an air of profound sadness about him. He moved with the easy confidence of a man used to being in charge, yet he seemed almost hesitant, as if he'd forgotten how to operate in a personal space. Over the next few days, a tentative routine began to form. Julian would stop by in the evenings, always with a plausible excuse. He brought a bag of groceries, claiming it was a standard welcome package for the corporate housing program. He brought a box of children's books and puzzles, explaining they were left over from a company charity drive. Each gift was presented with a businesslike detachment that belied the thoughtfulness behind it. Alara would thank him formally, and they would talk while Leo played on the floor. Their conversations were simple, focused on Leo's recovery from his cold, the details of her new job, the weather. They were 2 people from different worlds, circling each other cautiously, speaking a language of polite surfaces, while their deeper selves listened intently. The true bridge between them was Leo. Unburdened by adult suspicion or social class, Leo saw Julian not as a benefactor or a mystery, but simply as a new, interesting person. One evening, while Julian was watching him build a tower of blocks, Leo walked over and pressed a small, scuffed-up red toy car into his hand. "This is for your big car," Leo said with the solemnity of a king bestowing a great treasure. "So it won't be lonely." Julian stared at the cheap piece of plastic in his palm. His own car was a marvel of engineering worth more than the house Alara grew up in. But this tiny, worthless toy felt heavy, significant. He closed his hand around it and slipped it into the pocket of his $1,000 suit jacket. "Thank you, Leo," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. "I'll take good care of it." From the kitchen, Alara watched the exchange, and a crack formed in the wall she'd built around her heart. She saw a flicker of something vulnerable in the powerful man's eyes, a longing that resonated with her own. Later that night, after Leo was asleep, she found Julian staring out the window at the city lights. "You're very good with him," she said softly. He didn't turn around. "He's a good kid." A long silence stretched between them. "You never mentioned if you have children," she ventured, her curiosity finally winning over her caution. Julian's shoulders tensed. The easy atmosphere vanished, replaced by a sudden, glacial cold. "I don't," he said, his voice flat and final. He left soon after, the invisible wall between them rebuilt, thicker than ever. A week later, Leo was drawing at the large coffee table while Julian went over some paperwork he'd brought from the office. Alara had started her job, and though the work was physically demanding, the security of a steady paycheck and a warm home for her son made it feel like a gift. She felt a growing sense of gratitude towards this enigmatic man, a gratitude that was slowly, confusingly, turning into something more. Leo finished his drawing and held it up for inspection. It was a classic child's masterpiece. A wobbly house, a smiling sun, and 3 stick figures holding hands. One was clearly Alara, with long, scribbled brown hair. One was a small boy, Leo himself, and the third was a tall figure in a dark suit. "It's our family," Leo announced proudly, pointing to the tall figure. "That's you, Julian." Julian looked at the drawing, and all the air left his lungs. The carefully constructed dam that held back 5 years of grief finally broke. He saw another drawing, made with the same clumsy, earnest crayon strokes. A stick figure man, a woman with bright yellow hair, and a little girl with pigtails. "Our family, Daddy." The memory was so vivid it was a physical blow. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I have to go," he said, his voice strained. He turned and walked towards the door, his movements stiff and unnatural. Alara intercepted him, her expression a mixture of concern and confusion. "Julian, what is it? What's wrong?" He wouldn't look at her. He just stared at the door, as if it were an escape hatch from his own mind. "Please," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Talk to me." He finally turned to face her, and she was shocked to see the raw, unguarded agony in his eyes. The mask of the controlled, powerful executive was gone, and in its place was a man drowning in sorrow. He sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. And then, the story came pouring out, a torrent of words held back for too long. He told her about his wife, Sarah, her laughter that could light up a room, her passion for painting. He told her about their daughter, Lily, a 5-year-old whirlwind of pigtails and questions. They were his world, the sun and moon of his universe. And then he told her about the accident. A rainy night just like the one when he'd met Alara. A slick road, patch of black ice. He'd been driving. He woke up in the hospital with a broken leg and a shattered heart. They were gone. Just gone. "I built this whole company for them," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I wanted to give them everything. And in the end, I was the one who took it all away." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a small, faded photograph. It was of him, Sarah, and Lily, smiling on a picnic blanket. It was a picture of a life that no longer existed. He then reached into his suit pocket and pulled out the little red toy car Leo had given him. He held the 2 objects in his palm, the ghost of his past and a fragile symbol of his present. "Ever since that day," he confessed, his gaze lost in the middle distance, "I've just been going through the motions, building the company bigger, making more money, trying to outrun the silence. But it's always there." Alara sat down beside him, her heart aching with a profound empathy. She didn't offer empty platitudes or cheap reassurances. She simply placed her hand over his, her warmth a silent message of shared humanity. In that moment, he wasn't a CEO or a millionaire. He was just a man who had lost everything. And she, who had so little, understood that kind of loss perfectly. The wall between them didn't just crack. It crumbled into dust. That night changed everything. The confession, like a lancing of a wound, allowed the healing to begin. Julian's visits became less about manufactured excuses and more about genuine desire to be there. He started staying for dinner, then helping with the dishes. He and Alara would talk for hours after Leo went to bed, sharing stories of their childhoods, their dreams, their disappointments. He learned that she had been studying to be a nurse before she had Leo, and that she had left her hometown to escape a controlling, emotionally abusive relationship with Leo's father, choosing poverty and uncertainty over a life of gilded misery. She had been on her own ever since, working multiple jobs, fighting to give her son a life better than her own. Her resilience astounded him. In turn, she discovered the man behind the myth. Julian wasn't just a brilliant businessman. He was funny, with a dry wit that surfaced at unexpected moments. He was kind, not just with grand gestures, but in small, observant ways, remembering Leo's favorite cereal, noticing when she was tired and insisting she rest. A fragile, beautiful domesticity began to bloom in the high-rise apartment. Laughter, a sound that had been absent from Julian's life for 5 years, became a regular guest. He taught Leo how to tie his shoes. Alara taught Julian how to make her grandmother's lasagna. They were a study in contrasts. The man who commanded boardrooms learning from the woman who cleaned them, but in the quiet moments, they were simply two people finding solace in each other's company. One Saturday, on a whim, Julian suggested a trip to the park. As they walked towards the entrance, he froze. It was the same park from the photo in his wallet, the last place he had been with Sarah and Lily. For a moment, he thought he couldn't do it. But then Leo grabbed his hand. "Come on, Julian. I want to go on the swings." Alara gave him a look of gentle understanding, a silent permission to retreat if he needed to. But looking at Leo's excited face, Julian felt a surge of determination. He couldn't let the